I would like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm broadcasting, and paying my respect to elders both past and present. Hi there, I'm young adult author Will Kostakis, and welcome to our virtual celebration of the writers shortlisted for this year's Hachette Australia Prize for Young Writers. The prize is sponsored by Hachette Australia, obviously, that's in the name, and administered by Express Media, Australia's peak youth literary organisation. It's my honour to be the prize's 2020 mentor. Getting to read the works of emerging writers is one of the great perks of being an author. The quality of this year's entrants was astounding across all three categories, and in judging, we often found ourselves pausing to savour a line or rushing to reread entries. Before I announce the winners, I want to congratulate all of our shortlisted writers for not only writing these pieces, but for having the guts to share them with us. Whatever the outcome today, please see this as an opportunity, something to motivate you to keep working on your craft, because we really want to read more from you. It's now time to introduce the remarkable shortlist for creative non-fiction. From Western Australia, Bethany Tan, Sunday Noodles.
Sunday Noodles. Every Sunday morning, the first thing Papa does is turn on the radio to listen to the only Chinese station there was on the island. She replaces the incense in our altar and gets started on the noodles. By the time I wake up, the anchovy broth is already violently bubbling. The hand-pulled noodles are prepared and set on the counter. The salty smell of soy sauce takes over the house. The wok spits off some fried garlic and Teresa Tang sweetly sings in the midst of it all. 你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分. You ask how deep I care for you, how much I love you so. Sundays are the peak of my week. Growing up on a multicultural, English-dominated island with immigrant parents made it easy for my family to adapt, however difficult for a Chinese-speaking child like me to socialize. From freely, fluently speaking and singing my mother tongue, to being placed in an environment where English was the main language spoken, I learned early on that it took a while for my friends to understand me, and a while for me to understand them. My childhood was never lonely, and I never felt excluded. It was just a matter of how hard I tried to communicate. The language barrier I faced when I was first placed in kindergarten didn't make my peers treat me in a way that made me feel less included. It was the lack of effort I put in to break the barrier that made me a very unsociable 5-year-old. My parents knew of this, however, were much more concerned in investing their time trying to grow their starting business. Moving 1,680 kilometers away from their homeland to an isolated island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, my family couldn't waste any time on me, nor money. However, as busy as they were, every Sunday they would leave work early to help make Sunday noodles. I remember the way my sister would purposely drop a humongous bowl of dough into the boiling water and quickly run off laughing to her room in fear of Papa scolding her. I remember the way that I did the same and ran off half screaming and laughing to the playground on the hill above my house, because my sister always locked the door to our room, leaving me to fend for myself. Living on the end of the street next to the forest, the playground was my hideaway. It was always surrounded by thick trees and leaves, making it hard for other people to find. It was the first place I visited when the air in the house got too suffocating. The feeling of grass between my toes, the warmth of the sun against my face, the earthy smell of dirt, the sound of leaves rustling against the wind, and the sight of the ocean from the roof of my playground always made me forget my childish concerns. 你的笑容这样熟悉，我一时想不起. Your smile is so familiar to me, but I just can't recall the moment. Even today, those feelings of loneliness and concern are always replaced by a warm bowl of noodles and a pair of chopsticks placed in my spot on the dinner table by the time I run back down to my house. It is moments like these that a photograph could never capture, because pictures can't make me taste the rich broth of ban mian.
From Victoria, Tasman Engelhard, The Art of Giving.
The Art of Giving. I first read The Giving Tree when I was 8 years old. I don't remember why I took the Caterpillar Green book from the shelf, but I remember sitting on my bedroom floor and feeling a feeling I rarely felt. It felt as if my breath could not reach my lungs, as if something was being forced out of me, or a great wave was rearing inside. And then I felt the tears in my eyes. I remember slamming the book shut and shoving it to the very back of my bookcase where I would never find it again. Crying was reserved for a skin knee, or losing a chess game to my little sister. Not books. Never books. The Giving Tree is about a tree and a boy. When the boy is young, they play together, and the tree is happy. As the boy grows older, the tree sees him less and less, and when she does see him, he wants things from her. First, he asks for her apples, then her leaves, her branches, and these she gives, happily. The story ends with an old man sitting on a stump, but the tree is happy. She will never again feel the wind in her branches or sun on her leaves, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that she's been reduced to a stump in the ground, a bump on the horizon. The boy's with her, so she is happy. We turn onto the driveway. Who's running down? Dad looks back expectantly. My younger sister Bean is out of the car in a flash and careening down the steep driveway. I hesitate for a moment, held back by a feeling of maturity. But Middle Cove is ageless. As the rest of the world grows and changes, my Nana's house remains the same. It means family and board games, long afternoons making paper aeroplanes, and watching movies by the fireside. Something has kept and continues to keep it out of the reach of time's corrosive fingers. I used to think it was a spell cast by the Sydney bush, full of twisting trees and bright birdsong. But I've begun to realize that the house is protected by its owner, who extinguishes the shadows and inspires joy. I've never met anyone like my Nana, and the older I get, the more I realize I probably never will. I do kind things, like walk the dog during my sister's week, or make mum lunch without being asked. But Nana is kind. Her kindness is a habit. She doesn't think about what she's doing or pause to wonder how much time it is taking. She just does it.
From Western Australia, Simon, Paulina, Finding My Liane.
A couple of days ago, someone asked if I had any pets, and I replied with the same thing I always do. About 6 years ago on Mother's Day, I had an encounter with a saltwater crocodile. My dad runs an Aboriginal tour company out on our property. The property is called Udiella, and the company is called Up To You. At the time, we had a family come out for a couple of days to do a tour with us. When they arrived, we had morning tea and then got ready to go to the river. Mum and Dad stayed back and started to cook lunch. My sister, my Uncle Neil, our two dogs, Ida and Mudger, and I made our way down to the river with the guests. We made it down to the river. The water was crystal clear, but the water still was running a bit fast from the wet season that had just passed. I went down to the bank to check for any signs of a crocodile. I looked for tracks, but couldn't see any. I had an eerie feeling that I couldn't seem to shake, but there were no obvious signs of danger, so I called out for everyone to come down. Within 30 seconds of being down on the river, my little sister made a mudslide with the kids that came with the family. They looked like they were having lots of fun, so I decided to forget about the weird feeling I had and join in with them. After about 20 minutes of sliding down the bank, we were covered in mud from head to toe, so we hopped in the river to clean off. I swam to the middle of the river. It wasn't deep, but the current was strong, and I had to swim forward just to stay in the same spot. It was like a natural lap pool. When I got to the middle, I noticed a long figure floating down the river, like a torpedo heading through the water. After a couple of seconds, my brain recognized the familiar shape. It was a crocodile, a prehistoric beast with skin as tough as armor. It looked pretty big enough to be a salty. I shouted out and told everyone to get out of the water. The current was too strong for me to swim back across to the bank where I came from, so I swam to the other bank on the opposite side from home. I hopped out of the water onto the sand and looked around for the croc. In the corner of my eye, I saw the ripple of his head going under the water. I knew he noticed us, so I kept my distance. I called out asking for someone to go get help, but the only one that left was my little sister. She ran all the way back to the house. It was about 1.2 kilometers. It might not seem that far, but for a 7-year-old running through the bush, that's a pretty long way. I had been on the other side for about 30 minutes, So I walked up the bank a little and sat in the shade and tried to keep calm and make sure everyone was okay. After checking up on everyone, I remembered that my Uncle Neil went fishing upriver, so I told everyone to stay away from the water and made my way up the river. I climbed down the hill to the sand and walked towards the steep bank, but little did I know the croc was waiting for me. As I got closer, my dog started to bark. I took one more step and he jumped in the water and started swimming towards me. Before my eyes could adjust, I saw the shadow in the water and the wake from its long scaly tail. In that moment, time seemed to have stopped, and I realised what was happening. My dog had saved my life, but at the cost of his own. Time went back to normal, and all I could do was watch. Snap when his dinosaur-like jaws as he did his signature move, the death roll.
From Western Australia, Jermaine Ubayd, an asthmatic who's been reading Edgar Kerrett, learns how to breathe.
Dear oxygen, you are the sweet elixir of life. You swim in the veins of every living creature, a messiah rushing through billions of scarlet tributaries. One tiny molecule capable of corroding iron, incinerating coal, and powering civilizations. The thing is, though, I didn't even notice you until you were gone. I'm sorry, it must have been jarring when you rushed into my lungs and was met with an impenetrable barrier of goo. I promise I did everything I could to help you stay. I used the inhaler every day, with a plastic canister to get the dosage right. I avoided pollen like it was the plague. Unfortunately, asthma is a stubborn son of a bitch. I was prepared when I had that asthma attack. Well, at least, I thought I was. Crisp blue brochures from the doctor's office had spelled out the syllables in words that I tried and failed to understand. Corticosteroids. Inflammation. Poring over the crude diagrams of trusted adults and step-by-step healthcare plans did nothing to prepare me for the symptoms in their execution. Severe wheezing, coughing that won't stop, chest tightness or pressure, an overwhelming inability to breathe, an all-consuming terror of the existence of mortality, a desperate desire to get to the next breath, the next breath, the next breath. The diaphragm comes down, the ribcage comes up, the bronchi swell, the mucus rises. You are trapped, lodged, dead in my throat. The next breath, the next breath, the next breath. Every shuddering gasp was futile. The only oxygen left was the vestiges of the previous breath left in my lungs, maybe 30% of a breath. According to Kerrett, that's about 3 to 6 words, depending on volume, length, and overall breathiness. Let's round that to 4. So, 4 words per breath. What was I supposed to do with 4 words? Suddenly, the words "let's keep in touch" were inadequate to capture the tear-streaked goodbyes, the inside jokes, the taste of friendship distilled into a glass of apple juice on the summer holidays. Inhale, exhale. "I'll see you tonight" would pale in comparison to the years. The honeyed hymns sung in the holding of hands, painted in scars and calluses and wrinkled over the decades.
From New South Wales, Zainab Safi, Cigarettes and Gasoline.
Cigarettes and Gasoline by Zainab Safi. My grandfather was a wonderful man. A doctor, a pharmacist, a published author, but most importantly, my greatest inspiration. Baba Khalid, I used to call him. He was always deep in concentration, his thick brows furrowed behind his glasses as he went over his next pharmaceutical book. He was never seen out of his crisp Italian-crafted suits and smelled strongly of Old Spice aftershave and cigarettes. His thumbs were rough from breaking open blister packets to sort medication for his older patients. A cigarette always hung from his mouth and, when he was feeling fancy, a cigar. Sitting leg over leg, he recounted stories from his past as he burned through cigarette packets like they were sunflower seeds. We had a little routine, him and I. Every morning, just as the sun made his debut appearance and the birds sung their morning song, Baba Khalid would walk me over to his greatest pride and joy. His 6th child, he called the naranj tree that sat at the corner of his garden, the backdrop of every family photo. He'd pick me up and let me pick out a naranj to split with him to have at breakfast. Between long draws of his Marlboro cigarette, he spoke about his childhood, his days abroad, how he came to fall in love with my grandmother, and everything in between. We'd always try to include a life lesson to take away from his stories. What did we learn today, Habibti? The story that sticks out the most isn't the heroic story of when he saved someone who had a gun against his head, or the time he was held for ransom by Al-Qaeda. It was the simplest of all, the story about the 7 triangular UFOs he saw flash across the sky when he was a child. I used to be in the army. It was no plane. The realist in me had a hard time believing him, but the twinkle in his eyes and his small, reminiscent smile convinced me. I told him my own UFO story, going into an annoyingly excessive amount of detail, yet he still listened. I think that's why I so vividly remember that specific conversation. He'll listen to me. Adults don't do that to 8-year-olds, especially 8-year-olds with a tendency to ramble. He only ever broke his focus to move on to his next cigarette packet. We only went inside when the explosions got louder and the people who delivered gasoline came yelling down the street. I remember sitting with him on the old-fashioned metal white seats that seem to litter every garden in Baghdad. The confronting smell of gasoline, the whistle of wind passing through the date palm trees, and the roaring of distant explosions is still vivid in my mind. Baba Khalid confronted me by assuring that the explosions were just meteors hitting the earth. We spoke about the solar system for hours on end, him with his deep understanding and me with my 3rd grade education. I still remember his faint smile as he told me how much he appreciated spending time with me. I'm boring you with my ramblings, but you'll miss me when I'm gone. He was right. I miss him more than I could have ever thought possible. The 28th of July 2011 is a time that'll forever be seared into my mind. It was the day I started to understand the complexities of human emotion.
And the winner is, virtual drum roll please, Cigarettes and Gasoline by Zainab Safi. Like the best creative non-fiction, Cigarettes and Gasoline is heartfelt and truthful. Zainab has created a touching tribute capturing the bond between grandparent and grandchild that endures beyond goodbyes. Well done. There were 5 startlingly different entries shortlisted in our fiction category this year. From Victoria, Soledad Musk, My Mother Wanda.
My Mother Wanda by Soledad Musk. Soul of Wallaby, died 2019, Ararat. This is a sacred place. This is like a church. This is a place where we connect and heal and unite as a people. Lydia Thorpe, Wurundjeri woman, speech at the site of the Jarbrong Sacred Tree protest. I'll be dead soon. I'm 6 years old. Not old for a wallaby. I was born near here, near these trees. The oldest tree has lived 800 years. Its stories are older still. 800 years. Their words are few. The noise is mostly silence. Silence is the friend of witness. I was born near here. I don't remember much. I have loose memories of warmth, and softness too. I do remember my mother. She was called Nonna. I spent most time in her pouch, sometimes with my head poking out the top. Then, when I grew older, my mother let me out of her pouch. I always came back. Don't go far, little fella, she would say. My mother told me stories her mother told her, and her mother, and hers. My favourite was Bwala, best fella hunter. In a time of no rain and little food, Bwala the hunter set out, with all his children, to find something to eat. For a long time he searched, couldn't find a thing. No emus, no kangaroos, no wombats, not even a seed. Just as the children had begun to cry, Bwala spied a great eagle flying overhead. The eagle was headed for a gum tree not too far in the distance, where his children sat crying. Held in the eagle's feet was a fine young wallaby. Bwala reached the gum tree as the eagle began circling slow. Bwala told his children, stay, and he began to climb and climb till he reached the eagle's nest. Then Bwala and the eagle flapped and spat. They snapped and clawed. But Bwala, the tucker thief, took the wallaby and climbed down. Best fella hunter, the children cried as Bwala reached the bottom and laid the wallaby down to light a fire. Everyone sang and laughed. Finally, they could eat. Darkness fell and the fire was ready. But when Bwala returned to the trunk of the gum tree, there was no wallaby. Cheeky little fella, said Bwala the hunter, best fella hunter. He better than me. My mother told other stories too, stories of people and animals. There was the terrifying roar of Big Fella Bunyip, the young girl Wanda who loved all young things like the young dawn and all happy things like yellow and red berries, and Biami who made the world and men too. I know the stories had deeper meanings, but they always ended with, time for sleep now, little fella. Little fella, she would call me. Wallaby, the white fellas call me. Will I be a bicolour? A poster in a nearby town calls me. That is not my name, let me tell you.
From New South Wales, Felicity Yee, Whites and Yolks.
You are at the opera's balcony. Bells are ringing, a first warning to the second act of Gluck's Orfeo ed Eurydice. But more so, it's a signal. It suggests you sever the conversation you are having right now. He jumps from recounting the beauty of the mournful symphonia upon the initial curtain rise, and now he's talking about something else. Eggs. Once I had this dream where I wrote the same story 10 years apart, he murmurs. I'd write it once age 15, then go back and rewrite it age 25. He pauses dramatically. But then I realized how nonsensical that would be in practice. I mean, who would read a story and then a better one? Why have scrambled eggs and then be presented with the yolkiest poached egg you've ever seen? It's a poor, hard-boiled attempt of a sunny-sided, introspective vignette. Nonetheless, he convinces you of his magnetism. Didactic, prophetic, hypnotic, attempting to write the interplay between past and present. You encourage him. You like it when he shares things with you. Confronted by your two reflections in the ocean, you celebrate and question this moment of platonic intimacy. You don't miss the silliness in comparing the sizes of your palms from when you were children, do you? But you do, don't you? What would happen if you told him you loved him? Eggs. A Freudian nightmare of a metaphor. Perhaps his retelling of a dream is an opening, an invitation to submit to a romantic impulse. Is this how he wants you to see his story? Maybe you're reading too deeply, for all eggs are is their whites and their yolks. But to belie their intrinsic contents, to forget its shell and its chalaza and vitelline membranes, to overlook it, it's a betrayal by the least.
From New South Wales, Xiu Zhang, Shadows in the Cave.
The tide rose. The ebbing tide closed in. The tempestuous tide rolled onto the golden sand. It's hard to decide where to stop for that Goldilocks authenticity. Authenticity. The notion that a thing or a being is unique and original, the opposite of imitation. The writer is the fairy godmother that dresses up banal phrases to imitate the complexity of authentic experiences. Long descriptive passages devoid of real meaning and possessing a particular deadness that reveals itself when the clock strikes. She's still an amateur at this art, like a newborn Pinocchio. Seawater drenched her sandals, leaving that slimy field beneath her feet. Tactile imagery develops authenticity. As she strolled on in the sand, a cave came into sight. A long time ago, she would have ran towards it, urged on by the boundless curiosity of a child. Now she knew curiosity killed the cat. A cliched proverb, humorous at least. The puppeteer would disagree. She laid down her pen and scrunched up the paper. Unoriginal language, overused setting, unnamed character, slow opening. They weren't like that. Fast forward. She stood at the edge of the cave, shining her torch onto the dark walls. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she turned around and returned to her car and spent the rest of the humid afternoon on the congested road. Why did she have a torch in the first place? Oh well, she needed a story. She went in. The cold bit into her skin. She felt scared. Objection! The writer has directly told the character's emotion. You have breached the law of show not tell. Would a real person ever have their feelings written in words on their face? The writer is hereby charged with inauthenticity. She tried again. In the darkness, the deafening silence sent a chill down her spine. By using stale metaphors and idioms, you save mental effort at the cost of partially concealing meaning not only for your reader but for yourself. What made the silence deafening? Was it really cold or was she scared? Why did she go in the end? As a rule, characters must always have authentic motivations for their actions. But do real people? the strings tugged from above. Is it the beauty that drew her in? The marbled walls arched over the sand, a canvas for ocean's hands. The cave seemed to come alive as she stepped inside. Crystal linings winked from above, damp, salty air embraced her. Inside the rocky mouth echoed the song of the ocean. A beam of sunlight showered her in warmth. Objection! The writer has presented a contradiction. You previously established that the cave is dark and silent, now there's light and music?
From Victoria, Ella Pilson, Fairy Floss Lip Gloss.
You want to go on an adventure? She asked, her eyes shimmering. Looking at me like that, how could I say no? My stomach rumbled at the bag of McDonald's in her hand. When did you go to Macca's? Maria laughed, holding the bag up higher. This? Mum just dropped it off. Somehow, even in a stupidly pretentious band uniform for a government school, she looked so cool. I mean, she was barefaced, still stunning as ever, and somehow even managed to make her tight ponytail look stylish despite how bald it made everyone else look. Come help me fix up my makeup, then we'll eat. Won't the food get cold? My eyebrows furrowed, groaning internally at the thought of cold chips. Don't worry, Maria winked. I have my ways. How does she do it? Prepare so well without effort. She sets the bag down onto the counter, and I uncurl the top to sneak out a chip, surprised to find 2 small heat packs keeping the food warm. That's why it looks slightly heavier than normal. And somehow, the chip's still got a crunch to it. Hey, Maria swats away my hand. That's for later. I grin, turning to swing myself up onto the counter, my legs dangling off the side as I watch her apply touch-ups to her makeup. Her brand new phone sits cleanly beside her makeup bag, the screen lighting up as she gets a notification. Her lock screen? A pink sunset at the beach. Not as if I really expected anything too different, but what catches my eye are how many messages she has. Self-consciously, I pull my phone out of the pocket of my navy blue skirt. No new notifications. Thanks, social life. Zoe, babe, try this lip gloss. My face whips up, gaze set straight on the coral-coloured matte tube in her hand, the lid coming off with a pop, and even from here I can see the sparkles on the tip of the wand applicator. Why? I tease, feigning disinterest. It's stupid. It's lip gloss. I'm craving some form of attention, acknowledgement of my words. Because it's pretty and smells nice, obviously, Maria said. I lean forward towards her. Our faces just barely apart, and I can't tear my eyes from hers as she focuses hard on my lips, watching as the lip gloss is applied so delicately to my lips. I know if I wanted to, I could lean forward and kiss her, grasp her chin and tilt it up to face me, her hands in my hair with our bodies flushed together. But that's not how it works, is it? I mean, don't get me wrong, really. I'm not into her or anything. I love Maria. She's the best friend I have in the band. Yeah, we don't really speak outside the band, but I'm not gonna fuck up that friendship by having some big old lesbian crush on her, especially when she's straight. And as soon as it started, the moment's over. She pulls away, gesturing at me to rub my lips.
From Victoria, Aurora Carley, Space Race, a montage.
When I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut. I would jet set off on my great sponsored space rocket to cheering fans and come top of the class at rocket school. My classmates dreamed the pathetic 200 metres while I ran the space race. They followed the lunar calendar. I counted light years and raced relativity. Tin men in foil hats apparated in my room at night, gushing radiostatic revelation, aluminium icon emissaries of the messianic, frequency garble on the radio transmitter, hello from the void. I dreamed I would be famous, my image projected for mass pixel production on the light-up TV screens, pioneering boy hero of the space cinema complex. Intergalactic warriors of the frontiers of space-time, broadcast live and phenopoeic, direct current into the viewer brain. I had dreams in pixelated cartoon episodes of numinous blue light vision, a few crackling seconds of Voyage dans la Lune and a whipping banner with the American flag. Particles speed up and are excited near the sound barrier. My module makes a landing, the hatch opens up, and out I step onto the stellar stage, a space odyssey on the TV screen, me on the mothership, extraterrestrial, me on the film reel, larger than life. My father watched old movies with the sound turned down when he thought we were asleep, living through the digital image, portal of nostalgia and space-time. Maybe I'm losing my mind, but it feels like the whole world revolves around me somehow. It's a lot of world for one man, Truman. Sure that's not wishful thinking? I calculated manic and mathematic potentialities, transported to the dream world its optics and revolutions, telescopic gyrations and incalculable wavelengths, all elating with the caterwauls of the syncopated human schema. Since the beginning of recorded time, man has been inquiring to the stars to determine his share of the local heavens. Ever since he was a boy, Neil Mccarthy has dreamed of living in space. Now, at 41, he has finally had his dreams answered by Space Ace 190. One of thousands of applicants for the show, Neil was part of the lucky few shortlisted for the program back in 2119, which involved sending a privileged team of candidates up into space under the inaugural colonization initiatives. 20 years on, Neil is a national hero. This episode commemorates McCarthy's formative years in the force and his estimable inauguration as real-life plutocrat and space president-elect. Through the troubles, the hardship, and the trauma, we bring to you live and unexpurgated footage from the life and times of Neil Mccarthy. Oh, I love my life on the Crusader. It's more than a job, it's a lifestyle. It's a noble lifestyle.
And the winner is My Mother Wanda by Soledad Musk. The moment I finished My Mother Wanda, I was compelled to read it again. Soledad guides the reader through the story with a steady hand and manages the impressive feat of telling a story that feels both intimate and as if it spans all of history. A tremendous achievement. It's my pleasure now to introduce the 5 poets shortlisted this year. From Victoria, Claire Missingham, Threnody.
From the passenger's side, I am privy to the grand velocity, the flat straight road, the bitumen friction rumble, pedal point songline. The clean, not quite leather smell, sighing as we seatbelt wriggle, a strange mad threnody. Zeotropic wet forest, worn away stubs of mountains, thin waterfalls diving with suicidal glee, taciturn crags and secret apexes hide in fog. From the passenger's side, I can only see the road ahead, a long lace of licorice, sucked, snipped, chewed, the engine brisk and neat in its execution, fly-blown ruse, bechamel maggots, a buffet of sugarcane fields, monoculture like tight hospital bed sheets. Behind, where my forward-facing predator eyes can't reach, corpulent toads teeter onto the road and smell the exhaust. Cane beetles click and dance. Exhausted, I don't look back.
From New South Wales, Munira Tabassum Ahmed. There is an intersection of 2 selves at dawn.
There is an intersection of 2 selves at dawn. I was taught mourning is a much too perfect ritual, but we'll still ask each other to come back when the sun can't see us. The past is sweeter. You've never salted a wound, have you? We are the same person. This is the same day when the lily-pillies are most beautiful. These flowers grow in salt water, but I prefer to sit at the roots of a mangrove. Here I translate this past self, but it all comes to the same answer. Look forward, it is still you, I am still you, I know we've met before. Because the past moves further away, firmly yesterday, the future is much too bright now, but we'll sit here for a little longer. Morning comes too often, and it is done each day to shed the old self. Meet me at the broken clock and we will watch time cave in on itself. The future is a waxing crescent. Today tastes like sugar, but we, you, I don't know that yet. Your name reminded me of summertime, and all we have here is an end of spring slump. The water is not blue yet. I still rest and translate this future. Look back, it is still you, I am still you. At dawn, we are both tonight and tomorrow, and the day after. We are two handmade carpets laid out under the sun to soften our colors. I was taught mourning comes too often, and mourning is a much too perfect ritual. It is done each day to shed the old self, but we'll still ask each other to come back. Meet me at the broken clock when the sun can't see us, and we will watch time cave in on itself. The past is sweeter, the future is a waxing crescent. You've never salted a wound, have you? Today tastes like sugar. We are the same person, this is the same day, but we, you, I don't know that yet. When the lily pillies are most beautiful, your name reminded me of summertime. And these flowers grow in salt water, but all we have here is an end of spring slump. I prefer to sit at the roots of a mangrove. The water is not blue yet, I still rest. Here I translate this past self and translate this future, but it all comes to the same answer. Look back, look forward, it is still you, I am still you, it is still you, I am still you. I know we've met before, because at dawn we are both tonight and tomorrow. The past moves further away, firmly yesterday and the day after. The future is much too bright now. We are two handmade carpets laid out, but we'll sit here for a little longer, under the sun, to soften our colours.
From Queensland, Caitlin Mayer, Mosquito.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Mayer and I'm from St Thomas More College, Queensland. Today, I'll be reciting my poem, Mosquito. I could almost hear its tiny scream as its tiny eyes began to gleam. Flashes flew past my eyes, the executioner, an angel in disguise. As I confined the ectoparasite into a cage, my kitchen bench became a stage. As I sprayed the bottle of toxin, she was laced in a deadly concoction. At first she struggled, suffocated by my glare, then her eyes fell into a stare. Gleaming balls of jet glass perfection, it's a shame she thought my blood her confection. In a second of animosity, I had no issue taking her.
From New South Wales, Mariam Abbasim, on fearing the uncertainty of it all, who we are and who I might become.
And so picture this, and then we can forget again in the morning. The sun rises and sets and sets and sets again, door closing in the thin white moonlight. The picture turns to static, the news anchor feels more and more like a boy every day, and every day you wake up with the pillow damp and the people rioting in the streets. Somebody else has to make noise today lest the world fall silent. There's a pulsing at the base of my skull. The same one in your throat makes you wonder how far you could run if they let you. 1 notch above darkness. Enough to let you breathe if you really tried. How much does really trying count if you can't remember the last time it didn't hurt to breathe? When was the last time you felt enough to yell about it? You won't find consolation at the end of either path, but you won't find pain either. It won't matter. The heart beats unconditionally.
From Queensland, Alexander Little, A Creole Love Call.
I see you as you see me, through eyes of rich heritage from continents full of history. Blood from Yorkshire roses, deep black roots from sunburnt country. Blackbird songs and Irish proses, Biome's touch meets Germanic journey. In your eyes I see it too, roots of opposing trees intertwined. Green-brown eyes glow with excellence, Creole love, hearts aligned.
And the winner of our poetry division is A Creole Love Call by Alexander Little. I was once told by a high school English teacher that good poetry is like music, and in that sense, A Creole Love Call absolutely sings. With so few words, Alexander captures two worlds uniting, blackbird songs and Irish proses, and you'll be hard-pressed to find a more apt depiction of love than that. As our time together draws to a close, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. No matter how you fare today, let this be a beginning. Take it from me as somebody who entered his fair share of writing competitions and lost, let's face it, his fair share. The only thing between you now and me is 15 years of writing and rewriting. Successes, rejections, inspirations, tantrums. If you want to be a writer, don't lose sight of that. Be open to criticism and feedback and write. Write, write, write. And we cannot wait to see what you come up with next. All the very best.